So welcome to our second talk in the Internet of Things track, and welcome Andrea Muccioni from Amazon. He will introduce us to the Amazon Alexa speech recognition platform and show us some skills, how to program things for yourself or how to program skills for the Alexa app so that you can do your own questions later. Thank you. Have fun.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Just to get an idea of the room, how many of you have an Alexa device already? Okay, roughly half. Okay, and how many of you have built a skill before? Okay, so quite a new crowd. Perfect. So today I just want to go through very quickly through the boring marketing stuff. And it's not just boring marketing stuff, it's to explain to you why we're doing Alexa. So why voice, why Alexa, and why the Alexa Skills Kit, which allows you to build skills or apps for the Alexa service. And then I just want to show you how to build a skill and things to keep in mind when you do build a skill. You'll see it's really, really easy. There's not much to it. It's more about figuring out when is it useful and how to make it natural than really it is about complicated programming. All right, so let's get started. Let's first take a little quick step back and understand why voice first. Who's seen this image before? Or something similar to this? Okay. This is called the evolution of man. And the way I like to see it is, it kind of shows how over time we've been constrained by the tools that we use, right? I mean, we've progressed a lot from a technological perspective, but we've become more and more, this is a bad word, but slaves to the actual device or the actual interface, right? The user interfaces have to essentially dictate how we should use a piece of software. So if I want to do something, I have to follow along the menu or the user interface that a designer, it can be a beautiful user interface. I love design, so I'm not trying to say that it's bad, but the paradigm is that the user interface dictates how you should do something. With mobile, it got a little bit better because at least all of that technology we could bring with us. But where I think the biggest shift will be, and this is the new evolution of man picture, is with voice. And the main reason is that with voice, it shifts. It goes from having to adapt to technology to having technology adapt to you, ideally, right? Like our goal is that you should just be able to say something however you want without having to figure out, oh, do I have to say the specific keyword or that specific thing? No, you just express yourself, and then technology has to figure out what it should do. That's the goal. And there's some cases where it's much, much faster to use voice. For example, adding a to-do. What's the modern way of adding a to-do without voice? You have to locate your phone. You have to unlock your phone. You have to locate and open the appropriate app. You have to find the right to-do list, because there might be multiple to-do lists. Type the name of the task that you want to do, which can take multiple taps. Exit the app, close the phone, and put away the phone, right? What's a faster way? Just say, Alexa, add book flight to my to-do list. And I like this example here, turning off the lights, because it also shows something else, as you will see. What's the modern way of turning off the lights without voice, right? You have to locate your phone, unlock your phone. How many of you have smart devices in your home? Okay, some of you. Do you all use the apps for it, or do you use voice? Yeah. So you may find that it's quite annoying sometimes to have to open the app. I have a colleague who has like 1,000 smart home devices, and he has a whole dedicated window, like a folder in his smartphone for all the smartphone apps. And it's like 4 or 5 swipes to get to the right one. I have to go to the Philips Hue skill, for example, this Philips Hue app, for example, type the red light, turn it on. What's the old way of doing things? Getting up, walking to the lights, and turning off the lights, right? I mean, there are use cases where apps are convenient if you're not at home, for example. But if you are at home, what's even faster than the old way? Just say, Alexa, turn off the bedroom light, or turn off the kitchen light. So these are just simple use cases, but if we take it to an extreme, right? Like how many steps do you need to do to book a flight on Skyscanner? You have to do at least 8 steps. Let's say we want to go to Munich and book a flight and filter it by airline and cost type and price. You have to go through the UI, have to do multiple taps. look at how much information we could fit into a single sentence. Now, this is just an extreme example. I'm not trying to, say that user interfaces are bad, but look at how much the same information we can fit here. Hopefully, everyone can read this. Get me a Lufthansa flight from Berlin to Munich, leaving tomorrow morning for less than 200 euros. All those different colors are different pieces of information that we are able to fit into a single sentence. So this is why voice, and it sums it up. This video here, I think, sums it up quite nicely. Who's seen Star Trek 4? All right, so you probably know this scene already, but...
Computer. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
Right. And it shows how, if you're used to using something that's much more convenient, much more natural, it really is taking a step back. In this case, in Star Trek 4, they had to go back in time to the 1980s, and they're used to speaking to computer via voice, and they have to go back, and now they have to use this thing called a mouse. All right, enough about voice. I think we've talked enough about it. Next, let's talk about why Alexa. And first, before we talk about why Alexa, let's differentiate between Alexa and the Alexa-enabled devices. There's the Echo Show, which I will talk about briefly as well. Who here does not have an Echo and doesn't know what an Echo really works or how it works like? Okay, perfect. So the Echo is a smart home speaker that you can put in your home, and it's Alexa enabled. And the only logic that it has locally is a microphone array that has 7 microphones, and whenever you speak and you say the wake word Alexa, you can change it to be Amazon Computer or Echo. One of the microphones that's closest to you, so if I say Alexa, say hello. There's no audio yet, but you see how that one microphone concentrated on my voice right here, and the other 6 were busy canceling out the noise. So if you're in a noisy environment, it'll still hear you quite well. The only logic that it has in the device is the wake word detection. So until you say Alexa, nothing is sent anywhere. As soon as it hears Alexa, then it starts streaming. For those of you who are wondering when the Echo Show will arrive, the Echo Show is the device basically a big Echo speaker with a screen. When that device will arrive to Germany, last night we announced that it's coming to Germany. It's available to pre-order on the website, and if you look at all those new devices at the top, you'll see that we launched as well a couple other ones. I had to update these slides this morning because overnight we went crazy with new devices. But this is not just about devices, right? What I want to convey is that Alexa our goal is to permeate it across all the things that we use so that you don't have to worry about being near an Alexa-enabled device. And this is why also the Fire TV has Alexa, why we just launched a tablet that has Alexa hands-free, so you don't even have to press a button. You can just say Alexa, and that tablet will wake up and do whatever you want. And the Amazon Prime Music app is also Alexa-enabled. So Alexa, Alexa, Alexa. But why is it special? And it's special for 2 things. The first one is the Alexa Skills Kit. And this is what we're going to talk about today. This is where you, as a developer, or as a company, or as a content producer, you can add your content, your service, to the Alexa service. For example, My Taxi, for example, Deutsche Bahn, hobby developers, for example, one of the most famous skills and most used skills is like sleep sounds. So that's content. Alexa Skills Kit is the content, is the apps. And the Alexa Voice Service is how you, as a device manufacturer, whether it be virtual or hardware, can add Alexa to your own device. So for example, there's an app called Reverb on the phone. There's a tutorial online that I followed that you can create your own little Java Alexa Echo on your own computer. And both of these services are free. You don't need to pay anything to build skills or to add Alexa to your own device. There's no licensing fees. But let's focus on the Skills Kit for now. The Skills Kit, as I said, allows you to produce skills. It's divided into 3 main types of skills. The first one is custom. And the way you should see custom skills is when a user invokes that skill, it sort of is transported into the context of that skill. So if I say, Alexa, open my taxi, when Alexa communicates with the MyTaxi service, then I am seamlessly talking to the MyTaxi service, right? Or I can say, Alexa, ask MyTaxi for a ride, and then it automatically sends that command to the MyTaxi service. You don't install skills, you enable them on your account so you can use them wherever you are and with whichever Alexa device you have. The only downside to custom skills, given that they offer unlimited flexibility with what you can do once the user uses your skill, is that you have to invoke it, right? You have to say, ask MyTaxi or open MyTaxi. The smart home skills have a little bit less functionality, so it only has a limited subset of commands that you can issue, like turn on, turn off, turn up by X%, turn down by X%. But the cool thing is that you don't have to use the skill. Once you've enabled the skill, and once you have, for example, a Philips Hue light in your home, and you enable the Philips Hue skill, then everything is done seamlessly. You can just say, Alexa, turn off the light. And Alexa will know that you have a Philips Hue skill that controls your smart home light, and it'll just do that by herself. Flash briefings are also interesting. These are arguably the types of skill that have less flexibility, and it's essentially an RSS feed. So if you have content that refreshes every day or every week, users can add multiple flash briefings to their flash briefing routine, and whenever they say, Alexa, what's up? Or Alexa, play my flash briefings, it will play different flash briefings in order. So if you're a content producer, this is definitely something to look at, and it's quite easy to get started. So overall, we have roughly 20,000 skills in the world, and 2,000 skills in Germany, which gives you an idea of the opportunity that there is here. How many of you are German or living in Germany? Okay, perfect. So 2,000 is a big number. That's a lot of different developers and different companies building skills, but there's a lot of room now to build more skills. So, if you thought that you were late to the mobile revolution, if you thought that you were late to the web revolution, you are on time to the voice revolution, okay? And not only that, but if you do build a skill, you can visit this link for more information, you get some socks, which are probably arguably the most important things, right? And as a side note, you also get a device if your skill gets 100 users within 30 days. But socks, okay? So let's look into what happens behind the scenes when I use a skill. So what happens is when a user makes sound with his or her voice, right? To a computer, that's just sound. It's just sound waves. What happens? That sound is streamed up. Well, the wake word detection happens locally. And then once it's triggered, it sends the rest of the sound up. And that sound is transcribed to text using automatic speech recognition. But then once you have the text, and converting speech to text can be quite difficult because some words mean the same thing. Some words are pronounced the same but mean different things, right? Like, for example, read, read, or 4 miles. Is it 4 miles? Is it 4 Miles Davis, for example, right? So there's different things to keep in mind. And then once you even have the right words, what's even more difficult is figuring out, okay, what do these words mean? What does the user actually, what's the intention of the user? And this is both things that happen. And if your command includes a skill, so if you say, ask MyTaxi for a ride, then Alexa also has to figure out, okay, the user is invoking the MyTaxi service, which means I have to send the rest of the command to the MyTaxi service. But before I do that, I can't just send MyTaxi some raw text, right? I can't just send the transcription of what I figured out. I have to send the intention of the user, because how Alexa and skills work are with intentions. You as a developer don't have to worry about parsing raw text and understanding, okay, wait, the user is meaning this, and you do like a keyword search. No, you don't have to worry about that. How Alexa works is you define a voice user interface, and I will show you practically how that works. We'll do it together. And everything the user says is distilled into intentions. So your skill defines what intents it can support, and example sentences for each intent. And then Alexa will send you a nice clean intent code with a JSON request to your endpoint, and your endpoint can do whatever it wants and respond with another JSON which contains what Alexa should say back. So this is what happens essentially. So it figures out the intent, sends it to the service. Your service does whatever it wants, and all it needs to do is send back a JSON response. And if it's text that you've sent back, Alexa will take care of doing text-to-speech. You can also send back cards, and now with the Echo Show and multimodal displays, that's the direction that we're going in, multimodal displays. Also the Fire tablet now is Alexa enabled. You can send back templates and visual feedback as well. Because, we're not trying to say that voice will replace everything. What we would like to see is voice being a foundation with which we interact with technology, but of course, seeing things and touching things is just as important, right? But sometimes you don't want to touch 10 times to do one thing. You just want to be able to say it and then see the results. So, 2 sides to making an Alexa skill. The first one is the voice user interface. And this is where I mentioned where we define the intents, where we define examples of what users could say for each intent. So you train a model. It's just like a one-click process, and Alexa will recognize when a user says something that's similar to that, and will send the right intent to your skill. Or on the right, we have the programming logic. So where on the left you define the intents, on the right you define what happens when that intent is triggered. We're going to use AWS mainly because it has Lambda, which is perfectly integrated into, it's very well integrated for Alexa, and it's completely free. So you can have 1 million invocations per month for free forever, which makes it quite a good use case. If you do get more than 1 million invocations per month, not only congratulations, but there's also a program where we can reimburse up to $100 of AWS costs if you publish a skill. So essentially, publishing or creating a skill is free. Okay, so let's build a skill. But before we do that, let's think of what is a good use case for building a skill, right? We should choose voice when it is easier, faster, and more natural. We shouldn't use voice because it's cool or it's the cool new thing. We want to make sure that the use is better if we do it via voice. And this applies to everything, but especially to voice. Let's keep in mind when voice is better and when touch is better, right? Our eyes are very good at parsing lots of information. We can scroll through a page and just get keywords, get images, get key messages. Whereas with voice, we have to listen to everything. Voice, though, is ambient. It means that we can just speak and express ourselves, and it's faster as well. So let's assume we have the right use case. How do we start building a skill? This is probably one of the most important things. This is the BBC. What you see here is the BBC and how they prototype for voice. So without even touching a line of code, this Echo is not plugged in. This woman is pretending to be Alexa. And those people are pretending to be the users, and there is a wall separator, because it's very important to separate between, because as humans, we communicate a lot of information with our gestures, like I'm doing because I'm Italian, and with our face. So the way you do it is you close it off, and what they're doing is they're using scripts and post-it notes and flows. They're trying to simulate a back and forth conversation. And that's really how you mold the perfect skill. Because it should start with a human conversation, because as Spider-Man's uncle said, right, with great power comes great responsibility. When you get into the realm of voice, humans start expecting to be able to speak naturally to something, right? So if you don't make your skill natural, it's going to suck. So the way to do it well is to first understand how a conversation could evolve between Alexa and real humans, understand what type of intents they would like, understand how they would say different things, and then once you have all of that collected, and you build the script and you simulate what a user could do, Then you start distilling that into intents and into slots, which I will talk about in just a second. So let's say, and this is a real skill, I can demo it for you. This is just an example. I always forget when I last get my haircut. So a couple weeks ago, I built a skill, one of the many skills I've built, that reminds me when I've built my, well, I can tell it when my last haircut was, so it keeps a log of it. And then whenever I ask Barbara when was my last haircut, it'll tell me, oh, your last haircut was X days ago, or months ago, or years ago. As you can see, it's not years ago, but so how it works is, you say, Alexa, tell Barbara I got my haircut today. And in here, there's several things happening. There is the invocation name, which is the name of the skill that users will need to say to invoke it. And then there's the utterance. What information is the user passing to the skill? And you see that the utterance also contains some information that our skill might need, right? So you don't just want Alexa to send you a save haircut intent without any additional information, because then you wouldn't know when that haircut was. So if I say, for example, I got my haircut 2 weeks ago, that 2 weeks ago is a slot, and a slot is a variable. So a slot is something that if you define it in your voice interface that you are expecting a user to express a variable that could be time, it could be option, it could be date, it could be anything that you want, and we will see that. Alexa will take care of parsing it out and cleaning it for you. And this is especially useful for date and time. Imagine having to manually parse human ways of saying time and dates, right? In 3 hours, 2 weeks ago, last week, in different languages, or time, in 3 hours, 2 minutes ago, later tonight, stuff like that. So if you use built-in slot types like Amazon.time and Amazon.date, you don't have to worry about that. The model is already built and trained. So whenever a user says, I got my haircut 2 weeks ago, Alexa will send you a nice clean intent, save haircut intent, which you've defined, and will pass along with it a nice clean variable that is an ISO date or time or whatever. So you don't have to worry about parsing information from the user speech. Alexa will do that for you, and it's all defined at the voice user interface level. Okay, so let's demo it, just so you can see it. Oh, let me connect the audio. Alexa, ask Barbara when was my last haircut?
Your last haircut was 3 days ago.
Alexa, tell Barbara I got my haircut today.
Okay, I'll remember this haircut.
Alexa, ask Barbara when was my last haircut?
Your last haircut was today.
See, very useful skill. I built it for my own reasons, okay? Don't judge. We will be building a different skill, don't worry. But just a couple things to keep in mind when you do build skills. And don't worry, we're almost at the quitting out of PowerPoint stage and starting to actually see some code and letting the code talk, like the conference says. So one thing to keep in mind is eyes expect uniformity. I mentioned, right? Our eyes are very good at parsing and finding patterns and parsing out the information that changes. Imagine if your favorite app or your favorite website kept changing the user interface every day. Like the buttons were in a different place every day, the search bar was in a different location. You would go crazy, right? Because our eyes are good at detecting uniformity and just parsing out the differences. But our ears expect variety. Our ears really hate hearing the same thing twice. Our ears really hate hearing the same thing twice. Our ears really hate hearing the same thing 3 times, right? So what you want to do in your skill is have a natural response. So when you say something back to the user, either tailor it to how often they've used the skill, right? If they used it already, then say, welcome back. Or if you have to send a confirmation message, don't just always say, okay, 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 okay. Just say, okay, yeah, sure. Fine, great. You can have an array of possible strings and just randomly select one. And There's other best practices in mind, which I don't want to spend too much time on because I want to focus more on the skill building part. But if you do want to look up the best practices, this is a link where there's practical examples and all of the best practices regarding voice design, which could be useful for you. So feel free to write down or take a photo of that link. And the last thing I want to say before we actually start building is that we have a beta test functionality. So when you do build a skill, you are able to, before submitting it for certification, because okay, so this is what happens when you build a skill, and we will see it here. You define the voice user interface, you define the backend code, and then it's actually ready. It's actually live on your own device. So if you've registered your Echo device to your own developer account, right? So to your regular Amazon account, then you can immediately use it. It's automatically enabled for your account. But if you want other people to try it out, then the normal process of doing it is to submit it for certification. And that means that it's a bit like submitting to the App Store or submitting to the Google Play Store. Your skill is locked down and submitted, and you have to wait for certification feedback, and once it's live, it's available to everyone, which might not be the best way to get beta feedback, right? So the beta test functionality allows you to, before you submit for certification, send a private invite to up to 500 people, and they can click a link. They will get an email with just a nice link where they can just click, and it directly links them to the app or to the website where they can just click enable, and they will enable their skill, your skill, and it's going to still be in development, and they can try it out as if it were live. And this is really, really useful to get real feedback. Was anyone this morning at Ralph Eggert's Alexa talk? Okay, yeah, so I don't know if he mentioned it in that talk, but he uses this all the time, and he told me that, you know, all it takes is 10, 15 max people to get 99% of feedback and bugs covered, even if you build a complex skill. So really make sure to leverage it. Okay, so just very quickly, I will show you what goes into building an Alexa skill. Now, can everyone see this? Yeah, it's a bit cut, but this should be fine. Okay. I'm going to log in. So the developer portal is where your skill is born. So remember I talked about Alexa Skills Kit, Alexa Voice Service. We're going to do the Alexa Skills Kit. And you see here, these are the list of my skills that I've built. So Barber is not the only one. I've actually built useful skills, okay? And you see here there's a code.talks one. We'll talk about that later. But anyone have an idea? Anyone I just want to crowdsource ideas on building a skill. Anyone have a simple skill that they would like to see built? No? All right. So let's just make one up as we go then. I really have not prepared this, which could be a good or a bad thing, but let's make one up as we go. So the main thing here is the skill information. This is just the skill name. We're just going to call it code.talks conference and code.talks info, right? And let's pretend that we're because the other code.talks skill does something different, don't worry. This one, we'll just pretend that we're building a skill for code.talks so that users who are at home can access information about it or can ask it to do things. So let's say we're building the code.talks info. I won't go through too much detail on these options, but we're just going to go with the custom skill model, and we won't need the audio player, we won't need the video app or the render template. These are more things if you want to stream music or stream video. So we'll go to save, and keep in mind the difference between the name and the invocation name. The code.talks, usually it's best practice to keep them the same, but you don't need to. And invocation names don't need to be unique. So it's not like websites where it's always a race, a gold rush to who can get the best name first. With invocation names, which is the name that users have to say to invoke your skill, you can have the same invocation name as someone else, but the user will then choose which one to activate on their account. And if they activate multiple ones, then the first one or the last one that they activate will be the one used. I just want to check that. Yes, you can see. Perfect. Okay. So let's just say code.talks conference is our skill name and our invocation name. Let's save it. The real magic happens in the next part. The next part is where we define really what our skill does. And we're going to use the beta skill builder. The skill builder is a helper tool that allows you to build your voice interface. So, as I said, skills work with intents. So what does our code.talks conference skill do? Any suggestions? What could be a useful feature for code.talks skill? Perfect. So let's add an intent, and then I'll get to your suggestion as well. So get current talks intent, right? And what could users say to invoke this? Hey, what talks are happening right now? What speakers are on now? Can everyone read this? Is it big enough? I mean, I know it's a movie theater, so usually we have like small projectors, and you have to really be careful, zoom in to 200%. But here, I think we should be fine. So, what speakers are on now? What talks are happening right now? Give me the current list of speakers, and what's the current program, or something like that, right? The point is, you give examples of what users could say, but you don't have to exhaust all the possibilities. You just have, you should put as many as possible. The rule of thumb is at least 10 and ideally more than 30, but it'll still work with this. So once you build a model here, once we save it and we build it, what Alexa will do, it'll parse those different sentences, will kind of compute a meaning average, right? So understand what's the common meaning between all four of these, and we'll associate this meaning to that intent. So if a user says something similar to this, or with the same meaning, it'll route the user to this intent of our skill. But someone had another suggestion? Someone raised their hand? It was the same thing? Okay. Any other suggestions of what our skill could do? Awesome idea, yes. Get lunch menu intent, right? And we're just defining these as we go. We don't really care about what the actual name is. Get lunch menu intent, what's for lunch? I'm hungry. Get me food. I mean, unless we have an intent that actually delivers food to the user, right? So if we had like deliver food intent, then we wouldn't use this sample sentence in this intent. Get me food, or what's for lunch? You sort of get the idea, right? And you can have as many intents as you want. And once you're finished, let's just add, once you're finished, you just, actually I want to do something with slots. So let's say that instead of get current talks intent, we also have get talk intent, or get talks intent. And here, we can define what time or what day to get the talk from, right? And you will see how slots are used. So who is speaking, not peaking, who is speaking date at time. And I'm just defining these as I go. They could be any sort of variable name. As I said, these are called slots in voice lingo. And you'll see that once I add the sample sentence, it's created 2 slots. And these slots are variables that Alexa will then parse out for us. But we have to teach Alexa what is date and what is time, because these are just arbitrary variable names. The way we do that is we choose a slot type. So date, we'll use Amazon.date. And slot type, we'll use Amazon.time, should be there, yep. And we've essentially given our variable a type, a bit like in typed programming languages. You can also define custom slot types. So let's say your skill, or code.talks, let's stay in the topic. Code.talks has specific tracks, right? So we could ask it also who, what, or let's make a new intent so it's cleaner. Get track speakers intent. And here we can do what are the speakers for the track, right? Or who are the speakers for the track, and who is, or what's the program for the track, right? These are not good example sentences, but it gives you an idea. But really, there's no built-in model for code.talks tracks, right? It's something completely defined here at this conference. So what we would do is we would define a custom slot type. So we can't use a built-in one. So what we do is we go down and we add a slot type, and we call it code.talks tracks or something. And we can do IoT, we can do UX. I don't know, I'm not sure of all the tracks there are, but any suggestions? New technologies, etc., etc., etc. And then once you've built them, and once you've given Alexa an idea of the different tracks, then we can assign the slot type that we've just defined. You see here, code.talks tracks. We can add it, and it'll know to parse out words that are like the custom slot types that we've added. So save model, build model, and saving is just saving the data, and building is actually parsing the information. And you see it takes a little bit. In the meantime, I can show you that all of the things that we've done can be represented via JSON here, and it's a two-way data bind. So if you change things here, it'll update here. And if you don't like using user interfaces, because on the one hand you love voice, but you also like command line interfaces, then we can also use the ASK CLI. And how that works is it creates a local project with the Lambda, which we will get into, and the models, right? And all of the things that we have here, and then you can just publish it. You can just say, ask deploy, and it'll publish to the developer site, and it'll publish to the Lambda where we define our code logic. Okay, so hopefully the model is built, yes. So how do we actually get the backend code to work? And the way we do that is we copy that. I'm just going to use a simple tool that I use that scaffolds my code for me from the interaction model, because really what the backend code is just a handler for each intent. That's it. And hopefully it works. Seems like there is some Wi-Fi issue, but in the meantime, let me open AWS. And how we do that is with Lambda. You define. Let me go to Ireland. You define the variables and the actual. You define a function where you define the code logic. So, why is this not working? Uh-oh. Okay, perfect. So we paste in our interaction model, and this is just a tool. You don't have to use it. That just quickly scaffolds the code. So if I create a function, and I use the fact skill template, and I use Alexa skills kit. You can host your own skill on your own server, by the way. This is just if you if you don't want to mess with servers. code.talks conference, and I'm just going to replace the code with what we just copied, and choose an existing role, Lambda basic execution. Next, create function. Okay. Now this ARN is the only link that we need to link it to our actual skill, because that's where this is where our skill lives, whereas backend code is just fulfillment of the intent. So we go to the ARN and we paste in the Lambda address. Sorry, I'm going a little fast, but I just don't want to go over time. And that's it. We're ready to test. Our skill is working. Now, there's no logic in our backend code. There's only dummy handlers for each intent. Let me actually show you the code. Sorry about that. I'm not a big fan of just copying and pasting and not explaining what's happening. But you see here, the handlers, help, cancel, stop intent, and we have get current talks intent, we have get lunch menu intent, get talks intent. So this is what will be routed to our skill if we use the Alexa SDK, and all we need to do is add logic to each intent and respond back to what Alexa should say back to the user. So we can query an API, the code.talks conference API, for example, or we can do anything we want, and then all we need to do is respond back with something. But our skill is actually working now. So if we test it, Alexa, open code.talks conference.
This is a placeholder welcome message. This skill includes 7 intents. Try one of your intent
Alexa,
utterances to test.
Stop. Let's see what's for lunch. Alexa, ask code.talks conference what's for lunch.
This is a placeholder response for the intent named get lunch menu intent.
You
this
get the
intent
idea,
has
right?
no slots.
In that
Anything
code,
else?
you can choose the response. No.
This is a placeholder response for the
Alexa,
intent named get.
Stop. Okay, so in the last 5 minutes, I'm going to show you a different skill that I built, and it's called code.talks. Now, this code.talks skill has only one intent, but for it to work, and I built it this morning, which is the #1 rule ever of conferences is don't build things and show them the same day. But I did it anyways. Hopefully it works. So what I need everyone to do, so how this skill works is it's going to pick a winner. I use Twilio to create a phone number. And if everyone texts their name to this number, it's a German number, what that skill does, it queries the Twilio API and picks a random winner for an echo dot. So I'll just give you 1 minute. If you want to participate, you don't have to, and I'm not going to do anything with the data that you send me. It's just your name. Just make sure it's a unique. Don't send Tim, otherwise we'll get 5 different or 10 different Tims. You can use your own unique identifier if you want, if you don't want to share your name. But everyone send an SMS to here, and hopefully if there's not too much lag in the Twilio API, then we can pick a winner using the Alexa skill. I'll also show you briefly how I built the code. So it's not just retrieving hard-coded information, but actually querying an external API and getting that. So it gets all the messages sent today to this number, and probably won't work, but let's just, is there no service? Everyone leave and come back. Does anyone have service? You are highly advantaged. What carrier do you have? Vodafone. You see, guys? So you can say, thank you, Vodafone, for allowing me to participate in my echo dot. Okay, so I'm sorry for those of you who don't have service. I should have thought about that. We were in a movie theater, and usually they're like underground bunkers. But let's demo the skill. Alexa, open code.talks.
Welcome to the code.talks winner picker skill. Just ask me to pick a winner.
Pick a winner.
Okay. And the winner is Carlos Martinez.
Carlos, nice. And if we go to my Alexa app, I also rendered a card that shows because you can also send cards back. And yeah, I built it. I literally added the sound effect on the stairs before coming into this conference. So sorry that it's bleeding in here, but right, you can send feedback here. And Carlos Martinez. Awesome. So I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you still want an echo dot. The bad news is I had troubles with my luggage, so I don't have the physical device with me. But I have a promo code that I will give you that you can just use it to order it for free on the Amazon website. Okay? All right, that's it. I think 2 minutes left. And anyone have any questions that they would like? Maybe, sorry, I did promise you, and I'll leave time for questions, don't worry. I did promise you that I would show you the code for the skill. Let me open it. Let me see if I... It's really low resolution, or really high resolution, so it's hard to see. Okay, so where is the one that I want? code.talks. Lambda, custom. This is using the ASK CLI, so I never have to open the developer portal or the AWS console at all. I can just deploy automatically. If you have questions about that, feel free to come talk to me later. But yeah, so you see here, this is the language strings where I can define the text that I use in my handlers, and I can define different locales, so I don't have to hard code strings in my handlers, and I don't have to build a different Lambda function for each language. I only added English for now. And this is where you just you create the Alexa object and you register the handlers, and the handlers are literally just a list of the intents that we've seen. For example, this is where the magic happens. I filter for this number, for this date, and I pick a random SMS. And yeah, I was really hoping that we wouldn't get this string, no SMS to pick from, but hopefully it worked. And then I render a speech output with and then a card renderer, which is optional. And that's about it. So really, the main message is don't worry too much about the code. The code is easy, and you can just do it if you know how to. If you have any programming experience, you can build the skill for sure. The main thing that I want you to know and take away is focus on the user experience. Focus on making the skill natural and building the conversation in a natural way. Okay, so enough of the ranting, enough of the talking. Questions? And if you want to build, if you're interested in coming to a full day workshop, check out these dates and links.
Hi.
Hey.
Do you have any information about when different voices can be recognized? Because I have a 3-year-old son and he starts to talk to my Alexa. And
Absolutely. So, as you can imagine, we're quite secretive and I can't share that information. But you can imagine that the more Alexa devices there are and the more users will start using voice, the more important it is to have speaker recognition and being able to understand who is speaking where, right? So I can't share details, but we are working on it. And as fast as possible. Is that funny because you don't believe me, or? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Hi. As you were mentioning that every skill has a wake word, and I'm wondering because language is so differentiated, if you are able to change this the whole structure of the task that Alexa has to solve.
Yes. So for every language, you have to redefine the model. So if we go back, just so everyone can see, when I go to the skill builder and I go to where I build the skill, you see I can add a new language. And if I click add a new language, I kind of have to redefine the interaction model, I have to redefine the invocation name, because it's so different for each language, right? Especially if you want to use a generic name for your invocation name, like recipe helper. You don't want German users to say often recipe helper, German, right? Unfortunately, I don't speak German, so I can't really add it, but German. Yeah, so you have to, did that answer your question, or you have a different one?
No, thank you. But I have a different one, a second one. You were also speaking about something like search engine results.
Yeah.
Because like I want to order a taxi. How will you find out which service is then provided? I mean, there's My Taxi, there's Uber, there are so many services out there.
Currently, the way you invoke that specific service, so it doesn't, you don't say, Alexa, order a cab. You don't say that. You say, Alexa, ask My Taxi to order a cab, or Alexa, order a cab using My Taxi. So you have to, with custom skills, you have to, the user has to invoke the skill, right? So that's how you prevent the overlap between services. Obviously, that's not as natural as just saying order a cab. Maybe in the future we'll have different API subsets for different domains where you can, a bit like the smart home API. You don't have to invoke the Philips Hue skill. You can just say turn on the lights. But that's because we've predefined what sort of commands there can be, and the skill developer has integrated into specific subsets of APIs that allow that to happen. But with custom skills, since you could really do anything, we built a code.talks skill that gives us the lunch menu, right? Like we can't say, Alexa, what's the lunch menu for the conference? It has to know what conference, it has to know what you mean by lunch menu, where to get that information. So it really has to, currently you have to invoke the skill.
Thank you.
So that avoids the overlap.
So let's say I'm like a standalone developer, and let's stay with this cab example. When I want to develop a skill that says, hey, Alexa, order a cab for me, I could maybe in my backend logic just determine, okay, what's the closest taxi provider around here, and I could just develop the service that sends any random car provider to me. So is this the point of how to develop skills when I'm just a standalone developer and not from a big company? or what is the point for me as a developer, not belong to a company to develop skills?
There's two things I want to say about that. So the top engaging skills that we have currently are not by big companies; they're by independent developers. And actually, I don't know if you saw this, but if you build an engaging skills, Amazon will send you a check. If you build skills that a lot of people use, you will get a check and money just pro bono to you. So, and one of the most popular skills in the US, for example, is by a standalone developer, and then now he has consulting work. And so don't think that only big companies should build skills. It's full of hobby developers or independent developers building skills, and now they're making a business out of it. I can link you with specific German skill developers if you want to get their feedback. So that's the indie defense thing, right? The other one is you're building a service that can query different taxi services. Sure, absolutely. But you should build a skill. You have to build a skill that users can then use to. So, for example, they would say, ask taxi guru, right? Your skill is called taxi guru. Ask taxi guru for the closest cab. And then you would query all the different APIs and send the closest cab to the user. Really, it's up to you what you do. But don't think that the skill domain is, only an elitist area where only the top developers or the top brands can actually compete, because it's not the case. And actually, we've seen that it's the indie developers that are making the better skills. So build a skill and get some socks.
Okay, thank you. I think we are short on time.
Yeah.
If you have more questions, I'm sure you can ask Andrea afterwards.
I'll just go outside and you can come talk to me.
I want to thank you very much, Andrea, and a big applause for this introduction to Amazon Alexa. Thank you.
Thank you very much.